Welcome, welcome everyone. So glad you're here this evening. Welcome to the conversation about the prison within. The only way out is through. As we're entering, we invite you to check the name on the box for your Zoom. Welcome, welcome. If you'd like to use the chat and tell us where you're coming in from, we'd love to know. We've got a couple folks working on tech with us this evening. If you have any questions, feel free to look at the names that say tech, and those folks can help you with your technical questions. Great. We got folks from all over. San Diego, Oceanside, California, upstate New York, Champaign, Illinois, DC, Colorado, Chicago. Welcome, welcome. It's great that you're here. Daytona Beach, Grand Rapids, Silver Spring. Great. Well, welcome. All right. Before we get started, a couple things. If you want to put up the Zoom reminders, we've got a couple things to just keep mindful of this evening. We appreciate when your video's on. We love to see your faces. We love to have you in the room. So feel free to do that if you are able and comfortable. Your mutes, I believe, are off right now. We want to keep the conversation flowing, and you can use the chat for your questions, and we hope that you're jotting them down or popping them in the chat feed as they're coming to you in the discussion, so feel free to use that. There's a speaker and a gallery view up at the right-hand corner, and you can toggle in between. We're going to try to spotlight the speakers and the few slides that we have. So if you want to just keep it on kind of the main view, that's what you'll be seeing. In order to honor the community and the space that we have created with the Harm, Healing, and Human Dignity Conference, we ask that you refrain from sharing the Zoom links. That way we just keep folks here who we know are registered, and we appreciate that. And then just another reminder about the participant guidelines that we have. They're on the conference website, and I believe we're putting them in the chat as well, a link. So you can just take a look at those. They're a good reference for how we're honoring the conversations that we're having in the dialogue. Again, one more plug for the tech help with the bracketed tech speakers in the chat if you need some help, okay? All righty. Well, I really can't be more excited about tonight. We have some incredible speakers with us. I've seen the movie. Maybe you have too. If you haven't, no worries, because this is going to be such a rich conversation. For those of you who haven't seen the film yet, The Prison Within exposes the devastating impact that untreated trauma has on individuals and communities through the powerful stories of survivors of violent crimes and prisoners incarcerated for murder in San Quentin. The prisoners and survivors participate in the Victim Offender Education, or VOGE for short, program, an innovative restorative justice program enabling prisoners to discover how the trauma they've experienced contributed to their criminality and to understand the impact their crimes have on their victims. For me personally, as I watched the Prison Within footage from San Quentin, I couldn't help but think back to March of 2019, when California's Governor Gavin Newsom declared a moratorium on executions in the state. When states impose moratoria on executions, it is often the critical first step to abolishing the death penalty altogether for a state. And because San Quentin is California's only death row for male inmates and home to the largest death row in the US, and frankly, the Western Hemisphere, the world was watching San Quentin when the moratoria was declared. And at that time, Governor Newsom also ordered correctional staff to dismantle San Quentin's death chamber. Here's a picture of that historic moment. Thank you, Caitlin. This photo became symbolic of a paradigm shift. Dismantling of the death chamber became illustrative of people saying no to the throwaway culture, to the state having the power to condemn people to death, and then, by way of gas chamber or lethal injection, to snuff out their lives. So I had this powerful image in the back of my mind, and when I watched The Prison Within a year later, I couldn't help but think that what we see in The Prison Within is what comes after we dismantle the death chambers and the tragic notions that people's lives should be extinguished after harm. As two heroes in the death penalty abolition movement, Sister Helen and Brian Stevenson, have said, "You are worth more than the worst thing you have ever done." What The Prison Within shows us is what rebuilding and transformation looks like when we shift our sights toward human dignity and healing. I'm deeply grateful to the producers for the care with which they bring that transformation to life on the screen for all of us to witness. But before we dive into the film, I'd first like to introduce Leonard Rubio. Leonard is the executive director of the Insight Prison Project, which was founded at San Quentin in 1997. IPP provides highly trained facilitators and creates a space with Vogue that allows victims and incarcerated people an opportunity to work together, which dramatically aids in the healing process for everyone involved and enhances public safety by greatly reducing recidivism. IPP programs are now in 21 prisons and several reentry centers. Leonard, as the leader of IPP, I commend this incredible transformative work of your organization. It's so fitting, Leonard, that you kick off this conversation tonight because you became the executive director of IPP after you were incarcerated at San Quentin. And you were in the second Vogue cohort at the facility. You later became a co-facilitator of this program on the inside. You have such an incredible story to share. In many ways, you embody the very transformation and healing that The Prison Within brings to light. And I know your deep faith shaped your experience and your transition. It's great to be with you, Leonard. Could you tell us a bit about your story?
Thank you, Chris Ann. Yes, at the age of 18, I appeared on the outside to be the All-American boy, a two-sport athlete, a lifeguard at the city pool, active in the church and the church youth group, and on my way to study civil engineering at the University of California at Davis. The first in my immediate or extended family that was to go straight from high school to a major university. Having been raised in masculine toxicity of what we call the Melrose belief system, or Mr. BS, I unfortunately bottled everything up and put on a great mask so that no one knew what was going on inside. 4 days away from moving into the dorms at college, my life fell apart. The only thing I thought I had left was God and my girlfriend. I unfortunately found and read some notes from other boys she had been seeing, so I didn't think I had either one of those anymore. I left a note that I loved her but could no longer be with her, and included PS, don't bother to try and find me. I'll probably be dead by the time you read this. Without getting into the details, I shot and killed her during her passing period between 5th and 6th period at the local high school. I was eventually convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 15 years to life. I immediately started studying everything that I could because I never wanted to cause this kind of harm again. I was fortunate that many in my family and my faith community stood by me. I studied what it meant to be an adult child of an alcoholic. I took every program that I could while in prison. And in 2004, I asked the Catholic chaplain if I could host a one-day restorative justice symposium in the chapel. He gave me permission. In the process of putting that symposium together, I found out about a new program at San Quentin, the Victim Offender Education Group. I invited my friend Pat that was in the cohort and Rochelle, the program founder, to present at the symposium. We also had Ron Clausen and a number of other presenters come in. We had a powerful day that developed into the creation of an interfaith restorative justice roundtable at San Quentin in 2005. I was able to participate in the second cohort of the VOGUE program and asked to co-facilitate the third cohort. I have been a part of the IPP family ever since. I was paroled in 2010 and asked to join the board of directors in 2011. In 2017, I was asked to take the helm as the executive director of the Insight Prison Project. Our programs deal primarily with the harm and trauma that our participants have caused, as well as the traumas they have experienced. We have a 52-week curriculum that starts with their own crime impact statement, deals with the events in our lives that brought us to the point of committing the harm we caused, building empathy, and wrapping up with a surrogate survivor panel to understand the pain that they have suffered. We have had tremendous success with our program. Well over 1,000 people have graduated, and I personally only know of 5 people that have returned to prison. 2 of those were for new crimes, but did not include any physical violence. A tremendous success compared to the close to 65% recidivism rate we see nationwide within 3 years. The Prison Within has been in the works since 2013, and we are grateful that it was released this past August to let the world see the transformations that are taking place. For those that have not yet seen the film, we're going to watch the trailer before we move on to the rest of the panel.
Thank you, Leonard.
He, in cold blood, gunned down my husband and then stood over him and kept shooting.
I did come to prison because I did something terrible. I killed somebody.
I am only and just a murderer.
I was an instrument of destruction.
I am a conservative hardliner. And I got the death penalty. I got what I wanted. Nothing changed. I didn't feel better. It didn't work.
Coming to San Quentin, though, is actually what put everything in perspective.
It's really about being on a journey together to connect the dots of their lives that led to a crime, to walk deeply and profoundly in accountability.
I'm sorry for taking your son.
In the way that you allow survivors to come in and say what we need to say, I can't even begin to quantify how healing that has been for me. It's how this system should work.
Do you want him to remain on death row?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Hurt people, and we've been hurting each other forever. It's time for change.
Thank you, Chris Ann. I'd now like to take the opportunity to introduce the rest of the panel that's going to be with me. I have loved working with these people, and many of them I've known for quite some time. I will start with our filmmaker, Catherine Harvey, who I met about 7 years ago when she began creating this film. She has over a decade of experience in the criminal justice system as an attorney and a prison university educator. Catherine is the co-founder of Raw Love Productions, a multimedia production ensemble dedicated to visual storytelling. We at the Insight Prison Project are blessed that Catherine has been working with us since 2013 to complete her first feature film, The Prison Within, that captures the transformative work that takes place within our victim offender education group. I will also be introducing Erin Kenway. I've had the pleasure of working with Erin on completing this film. She's an attorney and certified mediator. Erin practiced law for over a decade, primarily representing economically disadvantaged victims of domestic violence. Erin shifted careers to focus full-time on independent filmmaking. Erin is the co-founder of Tarina Productions and is the executive producer of The Prison Within. And I have the pleasure of introducing a longtime friend, Troy Williams. Troy is one of many IPP success stories as a Vogue Victim Offender Education Group graduate, facilitator, and facilitator trainer. Troy developed multiple programs while incarcerated. Since his release, Troy founded Restorative Media and was awarded a Soros Justice Fellowship for his skill as a cinematographer to create a national multimedia platform to help formerly incarcerated people document and share their lived experiences. And finally, another longtime friend, Sam Johnson. Sam is another of IPP's success stories as a Vogue graduate, facilitator, and facilitator trainer. Sam served 22 years on a life sentence where he became known and respected as a peacemaker and a loving father that I was able to witness in the visiting room. Sam continues to give back to the community as a deacon of his church, a board member of Uncommon Law, and as a housing coordinator for Impact Justice's Reentry Housing Program. Please welcome my fellow panelists. With that, one of the first questions we want to ask is for Catherine, and that's, how would you describe the film for those who have not yet seen it?
Thank you, Leonard, and hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. So The Prison Within gives a hopeful and viable alternative to our current punitive justice system. And it does this through the hearts and minds and real stories of survivors and prisoners who take part in this amazing restorative justice program called Vogue. And Sam and Troy are in the film, and they're participants within this. So this is the narrative that really grounds the film. But you know, to me, the way that I designed it, the way that I edited it, it's also more than that, because it is The Prison Within. It is the title of The Prison Within. So when you watch the people in the film, the men and women in the film, really explore themselves and take accountability with such vulnerability and honesty for the harms that they commit, you as a viewer actually can experience some healing yourself, because it's through watching them that kind of, you know, the own harms perhaps that you've committed have been brought up. So you can't help kind of but do it within yourself as well. So it's really a film about individual healing as well as collective healing.
Thank you, Catherine. Now I'd like to ask Erin a question, and that is, please describe how the film's message is so timely to current events.
Thank you, Leonard, and thank you again to the Catholic Mobilizing Network for including us in this incredible conference. Good job. This organization is so wonderful, so thank you so much. But to answer your question, really with the conversations around defunding the police, what is really overlooked, I think, lately with the mainstream media is how much of that funding will be actually redirected to community programs to help heal the harm caused by the systemic inequities that are within marginalized communities and communities of color, to stop the school to prison pipeline and decrease the recidivism rates. Programs like Vogue that you see in the prison within really can be a solution to healing the systemic failures and meet the needs of victims by providing this empowering path and an active role towards healing. So we have the programs like Vogue in the prisons, but also the reason it's so relevant is these restorative justice programs really, really do and can have an impact in our communities before crimes are committed. And so I really think that there's a lot of, to answer the question, Vogue, stands for Victim Offender Education Group. And so I really feel like programs like Vogue can really help heal our communities.
Thank you, Erin. The next question is, can you elaborate more on what Vogue is and why this process is so important? And I'd like to start with Troy and then Sam.
Are you specifically asking me why the process of Vogue is so important?
Yes, please.
Yeah, well, I usually share this when I talk about Vogue. I often talk about me originally going to the program because I was actually looking for some language to take into the boardroom because I couldn't understand why they were not understanding why I should be released. But what I ended up getting from Vogue was so much more than a vocabulary. Actually, Vogue resonated with everything that I had been through in my life. It actually gave me a language in a way that was profoundly impacted the way I viewed the world. And I think that this whole process of having people witness you for the good in you and to really have genuine empathy come across from other participants who are your fellow prisoners or whether they're free staff who can model sort of the emotions and how to relate them emotions, all the way up into the victims panel, the surrogate victims panel, in which you actually learn to identify with what you put the person who you've harmed through. You gain a lot more insight into what you did to impact another person's life, as well as understanding, gain empathy around how your own life was impacted. And it doesn't really draw a major distinction in the sense that we normally think about it between who's actually the victim and who's actually the perpetrator, because we recognize that many of us who have been caught for crimes and sentenced to prison were at one point victims ourselves of crime.
Thank you, Troy. Sam, would you like to add anything to that, please?
Vogue was so important because if it wasn't for Vogue, the same bitter guy, the same numb guy to society, but it came out in the same shape he left, and even probably worse, because I would have been ticked off at the world for locking me up, and I would have been blaming the world for all of that. And Vogue helped me become accountable for the crime I committed. Vogue helped relieve me from the childhood trauma that, in a sense, I still need some answers for, but my he's dead and gone, and my mother, she died also. But I live because of Vogue, and I talk with my family. We have sessions at home. We discuss things openly and honestly and truthfully. No matter the embarrassment or whatever, that's the healing process. You have to be accountable for everything you did. And it was so important for me to find out why I did what I did. Why, when my kids came to the visiting room and my kids would be crying and stuff, why was these little kids hurting? And why was I hurting so much? And when I went to Vogue then and doing the letters of forgiveness and the whole process, it taught me about me. It taught me about childhood drama. trauma. It taught me that my father, because he was abusive to me and my mother mainly, that he was going through something too, and I was able to forgive him because he didn't have what I had. And inside prison, we got raw about it. Excuse my expression, we like to say we got naked. We revealed everything, and it made us a better person, made me who I am today. And I'm still continuing to do Vogue in my life every day because I have to catch myself when I start talking kind of crazy to family members because they don't understand what I'm going through. I understand, but I have to sit with them and let them know what I went through. Vogue is a jewel to me. And I thank Catherine for what she did with the prison within, because it was a prison within. I was physically in prison, but that prison that was within, it was more terrifying than the prison on the outside because it was hurting every night when I went to bed. And it was a dangerous beast that I had to get control of before it unleashed. So I thank Leonard and I thank Catherine for Vogue and for making the film and then giving us the opportunity to share our stories with others. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. And Catherine, can you elaborate more on what Vogue meant to you and why this process was so important that you decided to create a film about it?
Sure, yeah. So I actually, for those of you who have watched the film, I actually came to the film through Jamie Carroll, who is part of the film. So before I started making the film, I already had the concept of the prison within, and I knew that it had to include people on the inside as well as survivors on the outside, because I really wanted to tell their stories in parallel and to show that, you know, survivors are first perpetrators before they, you know, we're all victims basically, and then we hurt other people, and that's the cycle and that's the way it works. So by telling their stories parallel, I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And I found Jamie Carroll's story online. And for those of you who haven't watched the film, Jamie Carroll was, she was abducted at a very young age. I think she was about 9 years old. And just really horrible crime. She was, you know, repeatedly sexually assaulted and raped by these men with these other young children, young girls. And she managed to escape. And her whole life, of course, she lived with this huge trauma that she couldn't, of course, really get to the center of or to really heal. And she started seeing and realizing that perhaps with, you know, all the violence and trauma that was rising in her, that perhaps we're really all not that different. And perhaps she's actually not that different from the men who assaulted her, although of course she is, but I think you understand what I mean. And that to me was exactly what I was looking for, was that depth, that honesty, that vulnerability. And then I further learned that it really wasn't until Jamie went into one of these circles and sat with men who had committed, at the time she didn't know, but somewhat similar crimes to the crime that happened with her, that she says in her own words that this is really when true healing began for her. Because now she was in a room with people who understood crime, who weren't going to move away from her because they were scared of what she was saying, but who were going to move in towards her and help her heal and understand her. I was just so moved by by all of this. And so I contacted Jamie, and at that time, Jamie had already become a facilitator at Vogue, because after that first circle, and she says this in the film, she says, I don't know what this is, but I want to do this more. So she became a facilitator, and then so it started from there. And then I also want to say that we also took the facilitator training for Vogue before we even went in and filmed. And I'm very appreciative of that, because we also had to do some of the exercises that you see the men doing in the film and that the men are required to do in the Vogue program. So writing about abuses of power committed against us, when we've abused power. And so that was just this really beautiful and helpful thing to be able to have our own experience, me and my now husband, Massimo Bardetti, who's also a cinematographer and co-producer. And it all really formed from there.
Thank you, Catherine. I do want to address a couple of questions that I've seen pop up around what Vogue is. And as I mentioned earlier, it's a 52-week curriculum. Well, it's supposed to be 52 weeks. If we have 8 to 10 people in a cohort, and that because of the way the prison systems run and because the prisons are putting more than 10 people in the cohorts, they're typically running sometimes 2 years. So we have waiting lists at every institution that we have Vogue. One institution, Dual Vocational Institute in Tracy, California, we have 500 people on the waiting list to take our program. We don't have enough facilitators. And for many of the people that come to our Vogue program, sometimes it's the first time they're actually speaking candidly about their crime. Because most people that are sentenced to prison take plea bargains. So the truth never really comes out. And even those that go to trial, it becomes an issue of the prosecutor trying to get the highest conviction possible and the defense attorney either trying to get the charges dismissed or the lowest possible crime. And so again, the truth seldom comes out. And with our program, individuals have to be willing to be accountable and get to the very bottom of what brought them to the point in their life that they were willing to commit this kind of harm. And then learning tools to be able to deal with those things so that we don't continue to commit more harm, more trauma. Got another question for Troy and Sam. I'll start with Sam this time. How does restorative justice align with your faith? Oh, did we lose Sam? I guess I will go to. I guess
Can you hear me?
Oh, there we go.
There he is.
Okay, it was on mute somehow. Restorative justice align with my faith because it's all about forgiveness. I have to work on forgiving me, having to protect my loved ones, taking on that role to protect my mom from my dad. I mean, here it is, 6 years old kid being woke up by his sister and told that your dad is trying to kill your mom. And when you run in the kitchen, your father has his hand around your mom choking her, and her eyes is rolling back in her head. That's trauma. That's some serious stuff. And that was the first time I ever saw my dad ever hit my mom or fight my mom, because we never saw it out in the open. But this night it happened. And my faith was being tested. Because the first thing I asked God after all the beating as I was growing up, I asked God to please bless me to live, to get old enough to protect my mom. And he did. And I wound up giving my father 8 stitches in his head. But I love my father after I found out that his father beat him. So it's generational trauma. So, and we were a praying family. So Vogue taught me some things. Restorative justice taught me that I can restore my life. I can restore my family by sitting with them and talking to them. I never had the chance with my dad or mom because they passed on, but I had my sibling and I have my grandkids. I have 7 grandkids, and I'm very blessed to be home to be the person who's instilling God in their life and about love and about forgiveness. So that's how it aligned up for me, because I had to be willing to forgive myself in order to forgive others. And my faith said, like God said, forgive others or he won't forgive me. And I wanted God to forgive me for the harm I did, the tragedy of destroying a family. You know, being an instrument of death, instrument of destruction was an ugly thing. But that's how it aligned with my faith. I thank God for restorative justice. I believe God had his part in creating the people's heart to do that, and the guys inside to help facilitate it and write the curriculum. So that's how it aligned with my faith, because I believe, and I'm a very forgiving man today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam, for both your candidness and your openness. And Troy, how does restorative justice align with your spirituality?
That's a heavy question. I will say that it gave me a sense of purpose, right? And you know, I know Sam places it in the form of forgiveness. And I guess in some aspect, I can look at it in that manner, but I would probably describe it different for myself. It gave me a sense of purpose. It gave me a way to, like, I guess in many ways, forgive myself, because I could go back and sort of, I can almost rewind the clock, if you will. Like, I know I couldn't go back and undo the things that I did, the harm that I personally caused. But now I knew the path. And so by me knowing the path, I now know how to remove the roadblocks, because I know that there's a pothole right around the corner, 10 steps to the left. And since I know where that pothole is at, and I know we got a bunch of young people headed directly towards that pothole, I can now create signs to deter them, have conversations to deter them, participate in films such as this to hopefully deter them on different ways to go about expressing themselves or moving through life. So yeah, I just think for me, it gave me it gave me, on one sense, the ability to make the wrong I had done. It gave me the ability to be able to use that now for good. Right, because when as odd as that may sound, you know, when I pull up on the block where I come from, there's an instant level of credibility, and they listen to me. They listen to me in a way they probably don't listen to a lot of other people, and so that definitely, like I say, has helped me. And then I would also say that, you know, restorative justice is, I guess, an English phrase, American sort of phrase given to an ancient practice. And so understanding that it gave me this language, it gave me this ability to understand what my heart knew, but didn't know how to bring back into practice. It gave me a community to be able to stumble with, to walk with, to fall with, you know. And Leonard, I'm always like so thankful for Leonard. Leonard was one of the first people inside the walls of prison that I ever heard talk about, you know, this restorative justice stuff. Like, I'm like, what is this? What you talking about? I'm like, dude, done lost his mind talking about this restorative justice stuff. But once again, because of the credibility that Leonard had, he was able to reach others. And now that effect is now moving out into the community in ways that I'm sure we never even fathomed when we first started to participate in these type of programs inside.
Thank you, Troy. One more question for Troy and Sam, and that's, how can others bring restorative justice practices to their own community? You want to kick that off, Sam? Yeah, is Sam frozen?
We lost Sam.
Okay,
Sam's still learning technology.
So how can others bring restorative practices to their own community?
Well, I'll say this, and I think it's very, very important. You know, if I can just ask the group by a show of hands, can I just be 100% honest with this group? Oh, okay, I see a lot of hands. Okay, thank you. I think it's oftentimes when we talk about restorative justice, or we talk about bringing work to our communities, we often think about going to the Black and brown communities who have suffered so much trauma and working with them to uplift them. But we don't think about our racist cousin Bob, you know, and forgive me if somebody's name is Bob, but I'm just using that as an example. But we don't think about because in order for me to do wrong to somebody else, I had to have been going through a lot of trauma. So you can't be a racist in this time. You can't be somebody who oppresses someone in this time and not have gone through a lot of trauma, right? And that part of the work needs to happen on that side of the fence, if you will, right? So if you want to start a restorative justice program, we need programs that are gonna reach the people who are oppressing as much as the people who are oppressed. We need it in all walks of our life, right? And I really hope people are understanding what I'm trying to say. But we really need, like, you know, it's, and I'll just say this and let Sam go, but I've often found it very hard that when somebody comes and tells me how to deal with oppression, but they haven't walked in my shoes, right? You know, just pick yourself up by your bootstraps or just do this. And I'm like, I don't even have boots, you know? And so I just want to encourage us that when we go back into our communities and we talk about perspectives and empathy and understanding trauma, we all have experienced trauma in this country in some form or fashion. And not all of us may have actually committed a crime, but I don't think any of us can say that we haven't actually harmed somebody or saw somebody harm somebody. And how do we reach out to those people who harm other people in a way that gives them empathy, that allows them to realize their connection with all of humanity? I believe that's what we truly need.
Thank you, Troy. Sam, do you want to jump in here? How can others bring restorative practices to their own community?
You have to face that little kid that's inside you, that went through all of the pain, the suffering, and the crying, and the beating, the disappointment, you know, just wanting to be alive and people don't see you. You're going to have to really want changes for that. You have to really have to look within yourself and call it whatever it is. If you're racist, that's where the healing begins. It begins with you. You can't facilitate a program like Vogue and keep things hidden inside, because it's not the truth. You have to pour out the truth. You have to say, I was a victim. I went through this. I went there. You have to really, really do the work. And once you experience that work, then you can go to your community, because your dam is broken. The water's coming out. That childhood trauma that was manipulating you, that unmet need, is now being met. You still got years to do. I'm still working on me. My father died, so I never got the chance to face him. I was inside prison. And by the way, I did 26 years. And I know it was a typo when I sent it in, so I apologize for that. It's the child that had the trauma that I carried my whole life. I carried the fact that white people hated me. I carried the fact that my dad didn't love me and beat me with an extension cord all over my body. That's reality. I had to face that demon inside, but I didn't know how. But when like-minded people with the same pain and suffering sat in a circle and we start crying, you got a grown man in prison that's a taboo to cry. At San Quentin, we was crying. I look at certain TV shows right now, I cry because God has softened that hard heart. So you have to have that heart change. You have to be real. You have to want to love people. You want to have to forgive people, and then you can do the work. You can get like-minded people. You can help people find friends that went through that. You know the friends who went through it. And you guys together can do a beautiful thing with Vogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Yeah, one of the things we learned is you need to keep that Kleenex around when we're doing this work.
Yeah.
You're gonna be crying. It doesn't matter how tough you think you are. And one other thing that I want to add to that, when we talk about what can faith communities do to bring restorative justice, back in 2005, as I mentioned, I had created an interfaith roundtable at San Quentin. And one of the things we developed was a response and implementation plan for faith communities to be able to just take one or two things out of that plan and hopefully implement within their communities. If you're interested in getting a copy of that, please email me. I'll put my email in the chat and I will send you a digital copy. Because one of the things is it takes all of us, not just Catholics, it takes everybody if we actually want to make these changes in our communities. I also want to get back to the film and ask Catherine and Aaron a question. What was the scene from The Prison Within that you had to cut but wish you could have shown?
I saw that one and I was like, ooh, Catherine, how are we gonna pick one?
Oh my gosh, I wasn't prepared for that question, Leonard.
I'll buy you a second because I want to just say a couple things real quick. I'm seeing coming in on the comments, and I know I'm not sure if Sam and Troy are seeing them. One, they love you too, and
Who
two,
loves me? Who loves me? Thank you.
yeah, you guys know your love. There's a couple questions here about how. My favorite question was, I'm wondering how I can invite my white privileged racist death penalty affirming brothers and sisters to enter the circle. And in buying some time for Catherine, I want to throw out there, you know, some of the incredible facilitators in the film, and some of those scenes did have to get cut. So there is a segue here. Include, and I'll put them up here, but there's also some links on our website. You know, Inside Prison Project does incredible work. Stronghold, Karina Montag has some incredible panels that and training she does specifically on ending white supremacy and really addressing that culture that has existed within our communities. And I can add that link here too. And I think it's super important to look at it from all angles. But of course, the film has this incredible way of breaking down boundaries. I've shown some family members of mine that I didn't think minds would change, and they did. And it really has this power and personal connectivity to it that allows those conversations to start. So if I bought Catherine enough time there with a little plug, go for it and answer that question.
Nice, thank you. Yeah, have them watch the film. I mean, it really, like, when we had our premiere in Santa Barbara, everyone was coming up to us and they were saying, this changed how I think about everything, over and over and over and over again. But so I would say that what I had to cut was, you know, from the beginning, I worked with Sonia Shaw, who's in the film, I wanted to create this kind of tapestry of national trauma, if you will. You know, so Sam Johnson was very specifically in the film because he had this, you know, his story was so connected to intergenerational trauma with his father and with race. And Barry Spillman is a character in the film, and he was in the military and he had PTSD and committed his crime soon after. So, but there was two stories that I feel like really didn't come through as much as I wanted to, because that's just what happens when you make a film. And Mike Nelson, they both appear in the film, but Mike Nelson was in the film. Originally, why I wanted his story in there was because he committed his crime when he was 15 and then was in prison, in an adult prison at 16. And he was in there for 25 years. And at the time when he committed his crime, you know, and he committed murder, he was living on the streets basically because he had been sexually assaulted by a family member. And, you know, to me, that is part of this national tapestry of this, this funnel of everything that is wrong with the world that just gets funneled into our mass incarceration system. And then we're kind of like, oh, it's okay. We don't actually have to look at it. And it's like, yes, we do. We have to look at Barry coming out of the military with PTSD. We have to look at Michael, who was on the streets because a family member sexually assaulted him. We have to look at Sam's intergenerational trauma growing up in the South. And, the other one too, who kind of appears more at the end of the film is Punyu, who came here as a Cambodian refugee. And I wanted to have more of his story in there in terms of him coming over and his family coming over and like all of them just trying to assimilate, coming over here in, basically kind of these war-torn, gang-infested neighborhoods that developed his life here in the States, and certainly had to do with him committing a crime and landing in prison. And yeah, that's it. That's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you,
I would
Catherine.
say for me, I would be Michael's story definitely was one that I wish we could have included more. And I think it's hard because when you have so many personal stories, you don't want to go off the freeway too long, explore the neighborhood, come back, get back on the freeway. It's hard for the audience. It's called Mental Olympics. And it's hard for the audience to follow. So, but I definitely think Michael's story is one I wish we heard more about. His crime is one that is I believe is glorified a lot in our culture, specifically that bar culture of, oh, if anyone touched my sister, I'd beat him over the head with a baseball bat or whatever. We glorify this violence in a way that is almost heroic. And that was Michael's crime. And he was actually protecting someone on the streets. And that isn't to mitigate. He still has 100% accountability. I talked to him today, and I'll tell you real quick what he would like me to share with you guys on how we can bring this into the communities. But it is really about, I wish we had the opportunity to explore that more, because I think it's an interesting way to challenge the way that we think and how we talk. And that brings me full circle to answer that question of how do we go and bring this into our communities? Sam talked about it as well. We must first go within ourselves. We must explore in ourselves and take the time to go within. And imagine if we all did that, took the time to look at everything, even the darkest parts. And imagine how different the world would be if we could do that. If you can do that in yourself, and that takes work, man. That's going to be years. I'm a crime survivor as well. I was raped when I was 16, sexually assaulted before that many times. And it is something that's I'm still working on. And this film's actually helped me heal and make me look at how I may have contributed. Not in a victim role way of saying it's my fault. It's that we need to really understand the totality of circumstances. And at the same time, we have to be careful not to institutionalize restorative justice on a level that muddies that human element. The very principles and values that have inspired this movement can get muddied if we aren't careful. And we really, a great example is the concept of mindfulness has become commoditized and trendy. And so I say that here because this is the Catholic Mobilizing Network. And there's a real element of faith that we need to be careful about. Religion is a very powerful tool, but sometimes for some people, and I'm going to defer to the experts on this, but they need to make sure they're watching for it not being a way to defer the accountability that they need to take for their own lives and their own actions, and really make sure that faith is used as a mobilizing tool to help explore the areas in a safe way, and not as a tool to kind of punt the issue or defer off to what that accountability is, that important accountability that needs to happen. So what does institutional restorative justice look like? In that you forget the human element. It becomes more about the churn. for lack of a better word. And Ellen, that is exactly what Michael wanted me to share, was that we have to be careful and that it's not to institutionalize that restorative justice. So, yeah.
Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah.
Quick question for Chris Ann. I know the schedule said we were supposed to wrap at 8. Are we still wrapping at 8 or are we going a little longer?
I think we've got about 5 to 7 minutes left. But Leonard, while I have the mic, I just have to say, somebody put in the chat, I don't know if you saw it, and you wouldn't say it probably out loud, but somebody said, I had the privilege of being in the Catholic chapel in San Quentin the day Leonard launched the roundtable. Look what the Spirit has done, a bow of gratitude. I just loved that. I just loved that. Shout out to you.
Thank you, Chris Ann, and thank you, Lorraine. We did have one other question we wanted to try and get in here, and that's how can the film The Prisoner Within and programs like those offered by Insight Prison Project be used to shift the culture of how we address harm? Catherine, Aaron, Troy?
It's already doing that. We just got to continue to spread the word. Like we look. I don't know if the crowd really realizes that both Leonard, myself, and Sam a few years ago were serving life sentences to where we didn't know when or if we were ever going to get out of prison. And now we're out here on a Zoom call. I mean, it's already spreading. Like we have to do, when Catherine started this film, and I used to run over just to try to help because I love doing film work, I never imagined myself being on this side of the fence with her in a Zoom meeting talking about the film and the work that we started in San Quentin, right? So we just have to spread the word. We need a really deep grassroots push to just let everybody know, look, this is the work that's being done. Times have changed. Get with the times or get left behind. We love you. We want to bring you with us. I don't want to have to leave you, but we have somewhere to go. I don't want to be late.
Love Troy. And if you and when you watch the film, we hope this has inspired you. Please be sure to leave a review. I know that sounds really ridiculous that I'm plugging that, but you have no idea what these techie data distributor kind of people, I mean, they all look at the numbers. They don't care about the human interest story as much. And we need that help. So please share and do that.
Catherine?
I got so excited by Troy, I forgot the question.
How can the film and programs like IPP be used to shift the culture of how we address harm?
I mean, I have to say it's been so satisfying to watch people watch the film and to get their reflections and their responses afterwards, and the reviews that people are leaving. I really think, watch the film, share the film. The film breaks down everything that we need to fix in some way in this society. I really feel like it touches on it, and it does it through these profound human stories that we think perhaps that we can't relate to, right? Like we can't relate to people who are survivors of violent crime perhaps, or we can't relate to men in prison. But then you start seeing, I relate to Troy so much. I relate to Sam so much. I relate to Jamie so much. And we start seeing that commonality and really breaking down the barriers of us versus them. Because, and everyone's touched on it, but I can't say it enough. Like if we want to change the world, we have to start with ourselves. Like if I don't know what's going on in me and I haven't healed myself and done my own work, I have no business going out in the world and, telling people how to change their communities if I haven't really dealt with myself and my own body and my own heart and my own community. And this was a huge part of even me making the film, was every step of the way making the film, questioning myself. Who is my audience? Who is this film for? What is my responsibility here? And I think that comes out in the film too, even with all of these characters. So yeah, thank you.
And one thing I'd like to add to that is, like this film and many of the programs that we offer to people that are incarcerated, we're doing it after the fact. And one of the things we really need to be doing is start addressing some of these issues with our youth while they're still in grammar school. I'm sorry, but restorative justice practices, emotional intelligence, those are just as important as reading, writing, and arithmetic. And we have to wake up to that. One other thing I want to mention, in the film, there's a piece that comes up quite a bit, and we all know it. It's that old saying, hurt people hurt people. Most of us that have been in prison, that have been through the Vogue program, the thing that comes up is the traumas that we've experienced. And if we don't deal with that trauma, we continue that cycle of violence. But there's also a flip side to that, and that's that healing people heal people. So one of the things that we do is look at how can we bring as much healing to everyone as possible. And as Sam shared earlier, it's not something that is ever done. It's a process. We have the choice to continue to heal ourselves until the day that we die. And I hope that you'll all make that choice. Any other last minute thoughts, questions?
I have a quick question, Leonard and crew. Do you have a study guide or anything? I should know this, I suppose. I was so taken by the film, and we've talked, but do you actually have a resource for small communities, small groups to kind of go through? There's so much there, but to help unpack it with them?
We have not put one together yet, to my knowledge, but we have talked about putting one together.
And for the film, we haven't done it yet because you're looking at the majority of the crew here. Catherine and I have worn many, many hats, and we're trying to figure out how to create something that can be shared in that way. And we're working with Leonard on that, also, who runs a small organization. So remember, part of supporting this mission is, as you know, there's no one better at fundraising than the Catholic. So you know that it's really important, and spreading that word and supporting nonprofits like Insight Prison Project and other organizations, including KitKat. Michael started his own nonprofit. If you follow us on social media, we actually post about it all the time. I've left our email, prisonwithin email or prisonwithinfilm@gmail.com, excuse me. And we're more than happy to share all that with you guys. Or you can just go to our website. There's a link there. And we're happy. I mean, we will be the ones responding to your emails. So.
Yeah, and I just want to also add that, we don't have a curriculum yet. However, what we are offering though is, community screenings, which, if you're a part of an organization or part of a school or part of any foundation, please contact us. And, we do something very similar to this, where we do panels and Q&As.
Absolutely.
So helpful. Well, Catherine, Aaron, Leonard, Troy, Sam, wow, what an amazing journey. And you all poured yourself into this. Through and through, and it shows. Just thank you for sharing the Prison Within with us. And Leonard, the Insight Prison Project, that work continues. You're about it every day. So we have this final slide here, just another plug for Insight Prison Project. At the bottom, you'll see, I think you can see the websites for both the film and for Insight Prison Project. And then the many platforms where the Prison Within is is available. And reviews, correct me if I'm wrong, Aaron, reviews can be put on all of these platforms.
Reviews are available. And there's even more platforms it's on. It just would make a very messy slide. And so you are able to leave a review on any streaming platform that you watch the film.
Great. And we encourage.
Or IMDb if you watch it on Comcast or something. Yeah.
Terrific. Excellent. Well, thank you all for your time. Thank you for this labor of love. For those of you who are joining us for the next 2 days of the conference, we're not meeting tomorrow. We are meeting Thursday, beginning at 8 o'clock Pacific, 11 o'clock Eastern, with a prayer service, and then we're rolling into the other content of the day. So we'll see you Thursday, and then of course Saturday as well, including the circles. If you haven't already let us know if you want to be joining the circles, please do change that on your profile. Just thank you so much. Thank you to the hundreds of folks who came on tonight and for our amazing panelists.